In the dim, lit chambers of ambition, where shadows of alliances flicker like candles in a draught, Niccolo Machiavelli have pondered the inexorable march of the soul toward greater heights. Ah, but what of the companions we leave behind, those once vital threads in the tapestry of our ascent? Outgrowing people is easy, a natural shedding like a serpent molting its skin in the sun's indifferent gaze. Yet, outgrowing loneliness, that hollow echo in the vast halls of self-sufficiency is not. It clings like ivy to ancient walls, resilient, insidious, demanding a reckoning far deeper than mere departure. Imagine a prince ascending his throne, casting off the courtiers of his youth, whose visions no longer align with his grand designs. The severance is swift, almost merciful in its inevitability, but in the quiet aftermath, as the echoes of their voices fade, a solitude descends, profound and unyielding, whispering questions of what was lost in the pursuit of power. Let us wander these corridors together, my discerning listener, exploring the ease with which we transcend those who once walked beside us. Picture the young strategist in Florence's bustling streets, forged in debates with peers whose intellects spark like flint on steel. As wisdom accrues, like gold in a merchant's coffers, he finds their arguments shallow, their ambitions petty, mere puddles reflecting the ocean of his growing insight. Outgrowing them requires no grand proclamation. It unfolds organically, adrift apart as rivers diverge after a shared source. One day, conversations wane, invitations decline unspoken, and the bond dissolves like mist at dawn. Easy, yes, effortless as pruning a vine to encourage fruit. For humans are vessels of varying capacity. Some brim early, content with their measure, while others expand endlessly, driven by an inner fire that consumes the familiar. But the loneliness that follows. It is no fleeting shadow, but a persistent companion, a specter that haunts the victor's feast. Why does it linger so? Because in outgrowing others, we sever not just ties, but mirrors, reflections of our former selves that once affirmed our path. Without them, the soul stands alone in the arena, facing the vastness of its own potential. Rhetorically, I ask, is the eagle, soaring solitary above the peaks, truly free, or does it yearn for the flock it left below? The ease of departure belies the weight of isolation, a burden that tests the mettle of even the mightiest prince. In my observations of republics and tyrannies alike, I have seen men rise by discarding the dead weight of outdated alliances, only to grapple with an emptiness that no conquest can fill. Consider a tale from the annals of power, veiled in the intrigue of Renaissance courts. There was a diplomat, sharp-witted and ambitious, who in his early days forged bonds with fellow envoys over wine-soaked negotiations. They shared secrets, plotted maneuvers, their camaraderie a shield against the world's duplicity. Yet, as he honed his craft, mastering the subtle arts of persuasion and foresight, their company grew stifling, conversations looping in familiar ruts, their visions tethered to immediate gains while his eyed empires. Outgrowing them was simplicity itself, a gradual withdrawal, assignments pursued in solitude, alliances realigned with loftier minds. No farewells uttered, no bridges burned, merely a fading into irrelevance. Easy, but in the silence of his chambers, loneliness crept in like fog from the Arno, wrapping around his thoughts. Victories tasted hollow without witnesses from the past. Ambitions, once shared, now echoed only in his own mind. He wandered empty halls, pondering if supremacy demanded such a price. This duality reveals much about the human condition, does it not? Outgrowing people is the soul's evolution, a necessary cull to prevent stagnation, like a gardener thinning seedlings to let the strongest thrive. We recognize the signs, their words no longer ignite, their presence drains rather than enlivens, their paths diverge from ours as surely as a fork in the road. Act upon it with prudence, no dramatic ruptures that invite enmity, but a quiet disengagement, preserving dignity for all. The ease lies in acceptance. Resist it, and you chain yourself to mediocrity. Yet loneliness emerges as the true adversary, a void that amplifies every doubt, every unshared triumph. It is the price of elevation, a solitude that sharpens the mind even as it aches the heart. Delve deeper with me into this loneliness, for it is not mere absence, but a forge for character. Like a blade tempered in isolation, the soul emerges stronger, yet marked by the process. In the courts I knew, princes who outgrew their inner circles often surrounded themselves with new sycophants, but these were hollow substitute, secos without substance. True outgrowing demands confronting the loneliness head on, transforming it from foe to ally. Reflect, have you not felt this in your own ascent? A promotion seized, leaving colleagues behind, their envy or indifference a sign of your growth. Easy to move on, but the quiet evenings, the unshared reflections, they gnaw, reminding you that human connection, however outgrown, leaves an imprint. Analogies abound in nature's grand design. Observe the oak that towers above the underbrush, its roots delving deep while lesser plants wither in its shade. Outgrowing the forest floor is effortless for such a giant. Sunlight and soil favor the bold. Yet, in its height, it stands alone against the winds, no canopy of peers to buffer the storms. Loneliness is that exposure, raw and unrelenting. Or envision the river carving its canyon. It outgrows its gentle banks, surging forward with power, but in its depth, it flows solitary, echoing against stone walls. We, too, carve our paths, leaving behind the meandering streams of former companions. The ease of progression contrasts sharply with the resonant isolation that follows. Practically, how does one navigate this? In outgrowing people, employ subtlety, maintain civility, for today's discarded I may prove useful tomorrow. A nod in passing, a memory invoked without rekindling. Thus, you preserve networks while advancing. But for loneliness, the battle is internal. Cultivate self-reliance as a prince fortifies his citadel. Fill the void with pursuits of intellect, strategy, creation. Books become confidants, plans the new camaraderie. Yet, acknowledge the ache, suppress it, and it festers. Instead, let it hone your vision, turning solitude into a vantage point from which to survey broader horizons. In matters of kinship, this truth cuts deepest. Blood ties, once unbreakable, fray as one outgrows familial limitations, their contentment with the status quo clashing with your restless drive. Severance here is eased by distance, not disdain, visits rarefied, conversations surface level. Easy, perhaps, but loneliness amplifies in holidays unspoken, milestones uncelebrated together. It whispers of roots severed, even as branches reach skyward. As we meander through these reflections, consider the broader implications for life's grand strategy. Outgrowing people propels us toward excellence, a shedding that lightens the load for the climb. Loneliness, though, is the mountain's true test, not conquered, but endured, integrated, short. Growth demands sacrifice. Long, solitude refines the soul. In embracing both, we achieve a sovereignty profound. Yet, this loneliness is not eternal doom. It evolves, much like the prince who, after isolation, forges alliances anew not with equals outgrown, but with those who match his elevated stature. But first, one must outgrow the loneliness itself, transforming it from burden to bedrock. Indeed, outgrowing loneliness requires a stratagem as cunning as any deployed in the sieges of fortresses or the negotiations of treaties. It begins with recognition. This solitude is not an enemy to be vanquished in pitched battle, but a terrain to be mapped and mastered. its valleys and peaks turn to advantage. Like a general surveying a conquered land, one must inhabit the loneliness fully, learning its contours, the sharp pangs of unshared moments, the vast expanses where ambition echoes unchecked. Resist the urge to flee into superficial bonds. Such hasty alliances are but mirages, dissolving under scrutiny and leaving the thirst unquenched. Instead, delve into the self as a miner seeks veins of ore, extracting value from the isolation. In this alchemical process, loneliness transmutes from affliction to asset, forging a resilience that no companionship can bestow. Ponder this with me. The prince, having outgrown his youthful entourage, finds himself in the throne room's hush, decrees issued to silent walls. Easy was the ascent, shedding those whose pace lagged. Now the loneliness looms like a vigilant sentinel. To outgrow it, he cultivates inner discourse, treating his thoughts as trusted advisors, debating strategies, envisioning futures, refining visions without external dilution. Gradually, the void fills not with noise, but with purpose's quiet hum. Rhetorically, what if loneliness were not a cage, but a crucible? In its heat, impurities burn away, leaving the pure steel of self-mastery. This transformation affects life profoundly, shifting from dependence on others' validation to an internal compass, unerring in its guidance. Let us illustrate with an analogy from the seas, those vast domains where explorers venture beyond known shores. The captain who outgrows his novice crew, their fears anchoring him to safe harbors, sets sail alone or with a skeleton staff of his own caliber. The departure is straightforward, winds favoring the bold. But oceanic loneliness descends, endless horizons, waves whispering doubts, stars indifferent witnesses. To outgrow this, he charts his course meticulously, logs reflections as maps of the soul, turns solitude into a symphony of self-discovery. Storms rage, yet he emerges navigator supreme, lands claimed not just externally, but within. So too in your voyage, outgrow people by steering toward grander destinies. Outgrow loneliness by embracing the helm of introspection, where every wave navigated strengthens the vessel of your being. In the intimate spheres of affection, this dynamic plays out with poignant intensity. Lovers once intertwined, their growth paths diverging, one ascending peaks of aspiration, while the other lingers in valleys of comfort. Outgrowing such a bond is deceptively simple. Affections wane, presences fade, a mutual drift like leaves on autumn winds. No cataclysm needed, time and distance suffice. Yet, the ensuing loneliness pierces like a stiletto in the dark, nights elongated, memories haunting like ghosts in abandoned palaces. Outgrowing it demands artistry. Reframe the solitude as fertile ground for self-love, planting seeds of independence that bloom into fulfillment. Engage in pursuits that ignite the spirit, artistry, scholarship, conquests of the mind, until the ache subsides, replaced by a sovereignty where no partner is essential, only enhancing. Practically, forge this outgrowing through deliberate rituals, as an artisan hones his craft. Begin by inventorying the loneliness. Journal its manifestations not in lament, but analysis. What voids does it reveal? Fill them strategically. Seek dialogues with the timeless, through scrolls of history or tomes of strategy, where voices of the great converse across ages. Venture into selective societies, not the masses outgrown, but circles of equals, encountered through calculated forays. A symposium here, an alliance there. Test waters without immersion. Over time, loneliness recedes, not banished, but integrated. A shadow that defines the light of your autonomy. This affects life as profoundly as a republic's reformation. Decisions sharper, ambitions purer, existence enriched by depth over breadth. But beware the pitfalls, for outgrowing loneliness is fraught with deceptions. The temptation to regress, to clutch at familiar straws, is ever present, like a deposed ruler yearning for his former throne's illusions. Resist, such retreats stunt the soul. Instead, view loneliness as a sparring partner, its blows toughening resolve. Short, endure the silence. Long, emerge resonant. In professional arenas, where outgrowing mentors or peers propels one to leadership, loneliness manifests as the weight of solitary command. Decisions unshared, burdens shouldered alone. To transcend it, build an inner council, habits of reflection, scenarios envisioned in solitude's theater. Triumphs then taste sweeter, unadulterated by collective dilution. Weave now a story from the mercantile worlds I observed, where fortunes rise on tides of cunning. A banker, once part of a guild of traders whose dealings grew predictable, outgrew them effortlessly. Ventures pursued independently, profits reaped in solitude. Easy, the ledger balanced in his favor. But loneliness settled like dust on unused vaults. Evenings without banter, successes toasted to empty goblets. He outgrew it by transforming isolation into innovation. Nights spent devising novel schemes, corresponding with distant minds via missives that bridged the gap. Gradually, new networks formed, not replacements, but evolutions, partners matching his acumen. The loneliness, once a thief, became a muse, inspiring empires built on solitary foundations. Extend this to the broader canvas of societal ascent, where one outgrows the herd's complacency, rising to influence's pinnacles. The masses' chatter fades, replaced by the echo chamber of elite deliberations. Outgrowing people here is instinctive, ascension beyond the fray. Loneliness, however, amplifies in the rarefied air perspectives unchallenged, echoes of isolation in policy's wake. Master it by seeking mirrors in adversity. Engage critics not as foes, but sharpeners of wit. Cultivate solitude as a garden of ideas, where unconventional thoughts flourish unchecked. Life transforms, from follower to forger, loneliness outgrown into legacy's bedrock. Yet, in this meditative flow, consider the poetic essence of such growth. Loneliness, once a dirge, becomes an ode to self, verses composed in quietude, rhythms of resilience. It affects every facet, relationships deeper for their selectivity, ambitions bolder for their clarity, existence a tapestry woven with threads of endured solitude. As we navigate further, reflect on familial evolutions, where blood's pull complicates the outgrowing. Siblings or progenitors, their worlds contracting as yours expands. Departure eased by geography or preoccupation, but loneliness tugs at ancestral strings. Festivals hollow, lineages pondered in isolation. Outgrow it by honoring roots while planting new. Traditions reinvented in solitude, legacies crafted for posterity. The ache softens, solitude a bridge to timeless connection. In affairs of the heart's deeper chambers, where friendships forged in fire cool to embers, outgrowing is a gentle extinguishing. No malice, merely misalignment. Loneliness follows like a faithful hound, loyal in its persistence. Tame it through creative alchemy, channel the void into expressions, poems unspoken, strategies etched in private. Life blooms anew, connections sought not from need, but abundance. Rhetorically, why fear the lone wolf when packs limit the hunt? Outgrow loneliness, and the wilderness becomes domain. This understanding elevates existence, turning isolation's thorns into crowns of command. But the path winds onward, revealing how outgrowing loneliness fosters unexpected alliances, with fate itself, perhaps. The soul, tempered alone, attracts resonances unforeseen, mentors materialized, kindred spirits drawn by the light of self-sufficiency.